Welcome back to the Student Hub Live School of Education, Childhood, Youth and Sport Refreshers Induction event. And in this session, we're going to talk about tutor and tutorials, two really, really important things that you need to know as a new student. But if you haven't been an OU student before, you may not know how it works. And if you have been an OU student as well, it would be brilliant if you could share in the chat how you've worked with your tutor, how you've introduced yourself, so all those new starters can sort of get some great ideas like you've already been sharing. So to talk about this, I'm joined by Kieran McCartney, who you've met before, and also Claire Saunders. So welcome. You're both staff tutors, which means that you sort of manage some of the relationships between the tutors or associate lecturers and the students. So I'd like to sort of first start about how it all works. And Kieran, I know you talked about this briefly before, but for those people just logging in, how does the OU tutor relationship work then?
That's a good one. Best way to explain it, Karen, would be like this. The OU materials are the teacher themselves. So if you're an OU student and I gave you the materials, I could ship you off to a desert island as long as you had Wi-Fi. All right.
And a few napkins.
Yeah, napkins. Yeah, exactly. Don't mention the napkins. It's a sore area. So you could go off without a tutor or tutorial and pass that module because the materials are the teacher. They're written so well. We've got colleagues in the university who spent years writing this stuff and they do an amazing job. Where the tutor is in is that occasionally along the way, a student will have a question about the material or the content they're not sure about. Or they had a snag in their student journey that they can't submit an assignment on time. And what the tutor is the human element of the university that the student gets to interact with. So rather than the student feeling as if they're on that desert island, there's actually a few bridges that they can come off and go back to land on, and the tutor is one of those bridges that you can go to.
So the tutor's both sort of, I guess, one of the first points of contact, although there's also the student support team. But the other really, really important thing that they do is spend a lot of time giving really specific individual feedback to students when they've submitted assignments, which is something that can cause a bit of anxiety for people. Now, I wonder if you can sort of tell us a little bit about how that sort of side of things work. You know, you get the marks and you receive them and you send them back, and why it's important to have that relationship, bearing in mind the marks that you're getting back.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think from speaking as a student, when you hand in that first assignment, it's like sticking your head above the parapet and the bullets wasn't passed. You don't know what's going to come back at you. It's really scary. But the thing is that the idea behind feedback is that it helps you to grow as a student and consolidate your learning. So until you hand it in and get the feedback back, you don't know where you exactly are in your learning journey. And most modules are set up so that the first assignment is actually weighted quite less than the rest of them. So it is like a practice run that you step into. And the thing as well is that the feedback from the tutor is designed to help you develop. If you have questions about the feedback when you receive it, something that you don't understand, you're not sure about, get in touch with your tutor. But the most important thing, and the thing that the most successful students do, is that they don't just look at the grade, they look at the feedback in the script and the feedback in the summary, and then they engage in tutor group forum activity or with their tutor, and they learn from the feedback and they progress. And that's why it's there.
Okay. And so the tutor will mark the work, there'll be that sort of central point, and they also teach. So there's tutorials and things, and we've been asking people at home which are the important aspects that they want to cover in a tutorial. And in the lead is a friendly atmosphere and also tutors who address the TMAs, the tutor marked assignments. So people clearly prioritising those two in equal proportion. But we also asked them what concerns they had about tutorials, and 60% said that it was about finding them at a time that they're free. Now we're going to come on to that as well in a second. But the other thing that tutors do is obviously teach, and sometimes they teach in like groups, and so students might have their tutor or someone else, but they also sing from the same hymn sheet, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, I mean, once you get your all your information as a student, you'll see there's a whole bunch of tutorials that you can attend. And those are either online or face-to-face. Some modules have a mix of those. And so the first thing to do is to just take a look at what's available to you, really. And you'll find that there's options to attend online, options to attend face-to-face. And that might be with your tutor, it might be with another tutor that's in the group of students that you're working with. And a tutorial is exactly, I mean, it's great that they've said they want a friendly face. That's the aim, you know, is for it to be, like you said, Karen, the human face of the university, and you get that in the tutorial, even if it's online. I mean, I'm an associate lecturer as well. I'm quite brave in I turn my camera on so that the students can see me. They never turn theirs on. They all. I turn my camera on. Yeah, my cup of tea is just out of sight, but I turn the camera on because I think it's nice, that human face. You know, so they get to see what. I mean, it might terrify them, I guess. I don't know. I never thought about that. But and the first job of the tutor really, and that is to set that scene and be as friendly and welcoming as possible. We want the students to feel comfortable when they're learning. Yeah. So that's the important thing. And we do address the TMAs. I think that's a really important part of the tutorial. But I guess I also try to go a little bit beyond that. So, you know, what are the things you've done in this block of study that have really excited you? Yeah. What didn't you understand? So there's that opportunity to bring your questions about not just the TMA, but the broader material, which will actually help you better answer the TMA. And then we'll move into a time when we specifically address those TMAs, because, you know, we know that students that's their focus. You know, they want to make sure that they do the best they can in that. But I kind of think it's a whole thing. It's the get to know your tutor, engage on the tutor group forum, go to your tutorials, make the most of your feedback. Yeah. And if you see it all as one thing, I think you're likely to do much better. And the tutor's there to, as you said, you know, navigate you through all those things so that everything's feeding into your learning, really.
Yeah. So when you get those tutorials, you can like go and log on. You can book on them, can't you? You don't have to book, but it's really good because then it's populated in your study calendar, so you don't forget.
It also helps the tutor know how many people they're planning for.
Yeah.
Actually,
and then
that's quite
mail
useful.
you as well beforehand and stuff. But broadly speaking, you don't need to. No one's going to sort of say, "Have you done the reading?" or you know this, that, or the other at a tutorial. You can just sort of rock up and take what you can from it.
I always start a tutorial by saying to students, I never make the assumption that you've arrived having read everything to this point. You know, life happens, we're all at different stages, and we just deal with that in the context of the tutorial. You know, students that have done it, I don't want them to feel better than other students, so we get them to chat to the others about what they found out and all that. So I think it's really important, just come. Because actually, if you're really struggling, that's almost the best time to come to a tutorial, because you're going to find a bunch of like-minded people, and they probably haven't read chapter 5 either, you know? So you can just work together in that tutorial. So never feel like you can't come because you're behind. That's the worst thing to do.
And you can also, like the face-to-face ones, if you have those options, you can sort of scroll and see different areas, can't you? And you can just, again, turn up to those also.
Absolutely. You don't have to go to the ones that are with your tutor in your area. You know, you can find something that is convenient for you, time-wise, place-wise, and you can just go there. All you need to do, as you say, you can just turn up. Booking on helps, but it's not the end of the world if you haven't done that.
So this whole thing with the student on the desert island then, Kieran, how important is the tutorial in one of those? Are people expected to go, and what happens if they don't?
That's a good thing. First of all, there's no expectation. You're not required to go to a tutorial. It's actually a bit like becoming a student. It's optional. Yeah. You know what I mean? But as Claire rightly said there, if you can sort of think of studying like an artist's palette, and you've got all these different colours, and let's say the tutorial is yellow and the module materials of the AV is green. If you're only using yellow and green, you can only make a couple of colours. But if you actually go to the tutor group forum and you contact people via email and you engage in some stuff from like the student hub like we're doing here now, you have a range of different colours, and from those different colours you can then make more colours. And if you sort of think of study materials like the artist's palette, the more colours you have, the more colours you can make. And then the more colours you can make, the better your picture becomes of being a student and being better at being a student. So the more, basically the crux of the story is, the more materials you engage with, the more likely you are to be successful, and tutorials is part of that.
And it's also about, isn't it, trying things you wouldn't have thought you would try. You know, so, you know, I think I've never done an online tutorial, that's terrifying, I'm not going to take that colour. But actually, give it a go, because you might find things that, you know, one of the reasons I came to the Open University as a student was because I thought I liked studying on my own. One of the things I discovered was how much fun it was to study in a group with other people. So it's about being prepared to go, I'll risk it, I'll just give it a go and see if this bit's for me. And then often you'll find, do you know what, having a bunch of other students who are doing the same as me, having the same problems as me, that isolation goes, doesn't it? And the desert island feels a little bit less lonely.
Yeah, the island starts, you know...
filling up with other people.
It fills up with other people, and then it becomes a peninsula. And before you know it, you're a country and then a continent.
World domination.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I'm napkin folding.
Kieran, no one on the map is from Northern Ireland yet, so you need to give them a
Yeah.
wake-up call. Click on the map if you're...
Yeah. Back home.
So these tutorials, I mean, they're a great way of doing things, and often students really like to know stuff and have that content is great. But there's something about, I guess, consolidating learning that happens in a tutorial, and it's, I guess, being brave to think, okay, how might that be, and can we talk this through? So, Kieran, how does that sort of work, and why does that benefit students then, being able to talk through things? Because it can be a bit nerve-wracking, especially if you're not so sure about stuff.
No, that's a really good question. Best way I can think of it is compared to what people would consider a brick university. At a brick university, you walk out of the classroom, you go to the cafe.
Yeah.
You're sitting there having chats with people, and whether they realise it or not, you begin to talk about, did you hear the lecturer say this, or did you hear them say that, or my opinion of it is this, and my opinion is of that. And that is much more difficult to happen when it's written down. So you tend to find that students form their own little communities, either on Facebook, where they have a little subsection of community, or best way is on the tutor group forum.
Yeah.
And so those interactions that would take place in a cafe, where they learn together, now takes place a little bit more formally in a written context. The important thing to remember, and this is a key takeholder from this piece of advice, is that just like the cafe, you can listen to what other students say, and it's important, but if you're not sure, you must speak to your lecturer and your tutor. And similarly, and the best place to do that is the tutor group forum.
Yeah.
So but that social element is incredibly important, because as a student, I know myself as an OU student, I've been one, it can be incredibly isolating, not knowing, because you don't physically have contact with anyone. So it's just getting over that.
Yeah, no, that's great. We've got some questions, so let's go to the hot desk and see what everyone at home would like to know.
Quite a few great questions coming through. One of them, I did ask, has everyone got their tutor yet? But I should have asked if anyone's got their tutor yet, because I think it's that time of year when we're still...
Have you been promoting mass panic, HJ?
I do apologise, but I think it's the time of year. Some people are starting to get their tutors, but I think we can expect them more to come over the next week or two, rather than...
That is just how it works at this time of year. Some groups are sorted, some groups aren't quite yet. You would expect it to happen within the next week or so. Would that be fair, Kieran?
Right. It just takes a bit of time,
Yeah.
but it will happen. Don't be nervous.
Yeah.
You won't be left behind. So.
Fantastic. And a couple of people have had details about their tutors, but they haven't heard from them yet. Is it okay for them to take the first step and contact their tutors?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would be more than happy if they beat me to it. It's
There's
fine.
one thing that we sort of haven't touched on, which is this idea that, like students working part-time, tutors are also often working on a part-time basis, and so they're not there all the time. So sometimes you can send an email and think, why haven't they got back? And it's probably because they're off fishing or working in another university or doing something
Folding
entirely
napkins.
different. Yeah.
Kieran will be folding napkins. I'll be on my next cup of coffee. I mean, actually, nominally, as an associate lecturer for a module, we might have, say, 6 to 8 hours a week assigned to that module. And so most tutors are doing other jobs as well, or they're doing several modules.
Yeah.
I tend to say to students, expect it to take 48 hours for me to apply. It might not. Chances are it won't. But if you expect it to, particularly if you want an extension for an assignment, just be prepared to wait. But if it was really urgent, you would get an answer quickly, or you phone your student support team and say, actually, I need to speak to this tutor, but I can't get hold of them. Can you help? And they'll be able to direct you. So,
actually, I could jump on that too. One of the things on extensions. Can we say something about that? Is that okay? Yeah. For the students listening out there, extensions are not your friend. They really aren't. Some now, and this is speaking from experience, what I found is I took a couple of extensions when I was a student, and it had a snowball effect. And what happened was it almost like, it was like watching dominoes go. I fell behind in the next assignment, and then I had to catch up. And before I knew it, the final exam of the EMA was due, and I was still playing catch up. And I wished I could have come back and just said, rather than take even a 2-week extension, even taking like a day's extension, anything to get that time back.
Because often the ones towards the end have a heavier weighting or contribution to the
you
mark.
can't have an extension on the last one,
Yeah.
so you don't want to be up against it, do you, at that point?
Yeah.
So.
So it's really important to understand the assessment strategy for that particular module, what you can and can't do, and how much each thing is worth.
And that's the role of the tutor again. The tutor can do that with you and advise you. You know, if I get a student that by TMA2 is saying, can I have my second extension? The first conversation I'll have is, what can we do to help you not need that extension? Because and that's not because I'm being unsympathetic, it's because I know what's coming. So that, again, that's the role of that tutor being the bridge between what you're doing and everything else.
Basically, if your tutor's discouraging you from taking on an extension, it's because they know that it's going to have an impact on your achievement at the end of the module. It's not because they don't want you to take it.
Okay, Sarah's got a question as well.
Yes, Sarah's got a fantastic question. She wants to know if she will get tutorials for the access modules. Some people are doing the People, Work and Society or the STEM access as well. Do we get tutorials for those?
I can answer that.
Did you see Kieran and I looking really blankly at each other?
If you're on YO32, you'll meet me lots. So yes, you will have tutorials there. We've got a range of things prepared for students on access, although of course you're very, very welcome here and well done for preparing for the journey ahead. We've got an event for access on Tuesday next week as well, so you can check out the programme on the Student Have a Live website, and we'll be doing lots of Adobe Connect sessions, so you're very, very welcome to those. And those will be all on the module website. But access is a little bit different. There's one-to-one tutorials, so it's a little bit different to the tutor groups, because typically from level 1, students are organised in like groups of students, and then they might have a tutor group forum or tutor group area, and sometimes there's a larger group, so you never quite know how many to expect, but they're always sort of a fairly manageable space, aren't they?
Yeah, so your tutor group will be around 20, 25 students, and that's so you'll relate to your one tutor through that. Those groups are then organised mainly in geographical clusters. So the other associate lecturers you might come across will be other tutors in that cluster who've got their own group of students as well. So you'll relate probably mainly to your tutor, but you may come across other tutors along the way. But your emails and your queries direct to your own tutor, and then that just keeps everything manageable.
And it's nice because you meet some familiar faces, and you can have fun and things as well.
It's lovely at tutorials when people come back from level 1 to level 2, and they've met each other previously, and that's, you do get that. You do get to build relationships if you attend tutorials, definitely.
Okay, now while you said that, Kieran, well, I think actually you were saying it, Claire, you can just turn up at a tutorial and you don't need to prepare anything. It can be helpful to prepare stuff so that you've got an idea and a focus about what you're going to do. So how might students, if they are going to spend some time prepare, think about what they want to get out of that tutorial, maybe questions they've got that are unanswered?
Yeah, I think I would say exactly that. I would say, try and get through your module materials if you can, but don't panic if you haven't got all the way through. But yeah, coming with a question that you want answered is really helpful, because then you get the most.
Smart, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you would. Yeah, I'm thinking about this particular concept, but again, as I think you said it in the previous session, if you're thinking I didn't quite understand that, the chances are 2 or 3 other people at least are thinking the same thing, and you can thrash it out together. And so I think the best preparation is to say, what didn't I understand? What is it that I need to get out of this tutorial that I didn't get, and that I want to come away? And I'll often finish by saying, is there anything you came today not knowing that you still don't know? Because if you do, let's talk about that before you leave.
Because it's one of those things, like you were saying, you can look at a book and it makes sense. You can think, I understand that theory, but try and explain it to someone else or think about what you've read, and it can be an entirely different thing.
In fact, that's a good way to learn. Is one of the things I did when I was a student was I used to.
Do you want to say this?
I do want to say it. It's actually a really, really good way to learn, and you can practice this on your tutor group forums as well. But if you, as you rightly said, Karen, if you can explain an idea to someone else, it's usually an indication that you've learned it. So you can use activities in your module on your tutor group forum where you can write your understanding of something. Don't be worried if it's wrong, because it's not getting marked. Do you know what I mean? But it's a practice. It's an opportunity to practice and engage with other people.
Yeah, good idea.
So,
brilliant. And in terms of preparation as well, you're all talking about the Being an OU Student course, which is brilliant and a great way to start studying. So if you do have a bit of time over the next week or so before the module starts, that's a great thing to check out if you haven't already done so. Okay, so understand those concepts, and I guess in preparing for a tutorial, if you are thinking out loud or talking to your cat or whoever about this various concept, yes, I have. Didn't get it still, but wouldn't repeat it back to me. But it did sort of help me think about which areas, because like sometimes as well when I'm teaching and someone says I didn't get that theory, and you think, well, I could just repeat it, but equally I could just repeat it in exactly the same way that you're still not going to get. It's almost about what part of it don't you understand. And there's something very useful about thinking that through in terms of your own learning, because then it might be that you can figure that out and then don't need to answer that question.
Yeah, it's worth like you say, trying to verbalise it, maybe trying to write it down in a different way.
Yeah.
You know, what's the main word in this paragraph? Can I make sense of that?
Yeah.
There's all kinds of things
Yeah.
that you can do with the material in the comfort of your own home. And those will also better prepare you for tutorials, because then you can use the tutorial to check that understanding. Is
Yeah.
this right? And another thing to do, particularly I think in a lot of our courses, is to think about, how would I apply this in my work setting?
Yeah,
You know, if
yeah.
I'm doing an early years course,
Yeah.
you know, does this thing that I've read about, does that make sense of that thing that happened in the classroom today? There's that kind of, you know, toing and froing between your learning, your concepts, and your real kind of life job can be a really useful way
Yeah.
of going backwards and forwards and seeing if it all pans out and makes sense.
Yeah. And the other thing I think that's quite important to sort of emphasise is that you don't have to understand everything. Like the bits relating to assessment and the key skills, like, you know, there's certain things, I guess, in each of your discipline areas that are really important that you'll do over and over again. And so some of those are really important to understand and get. Other things, maybe not so much, but it's good to know where you can find them should you need to look certain
Yes.
things
Yeah.
up, isn't it?
Yeah.
So how do you sort of emphasise that sort of stuff in tutorials and things about what's important?
I'll probably give you an example, like referencing, for
Oh,
example.
yeah, everyone's
Okay.
worried about referencing.
Everyone's worried about referencing.
Stop worrying about referencing.
Don't worry about referencing. We can make it really simple, actually, than we think.
Kieran's
And-
Kieran will.
Yeah, so, and this is the sort of stuff you can do in tutorials as well. So, here, light, right, okay. So let's imagine for a minute that light bulbs do not exist. And by the way, what I'm talking about here is the importance of referencing
Okay.
and why they do it.
Yeah.
So light bulbs do not exist. All of a sudden, Claire invents the light bulb. Okay?
Okay.
So she's Thomas Edison. We've been living in darkness until now. Claire's invented the light bulb. Okay? And you, probably quite right, you'll become a multi-billionaire.
It would be amazing.
It would be, wouldn't it?
I didn't invent it, and I'm not a multi-billionaire. but-
Yeah.
Give up teaching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Play along, Kieran. I'll play along.
You'll play along, okay. Unfortunately for Claire, Karen stole the idea.
Shocking.
Disgusting.
I wouldn't really.
Yeah,
No.
but now Karen has got the idea for the light bulb, and Karen's going to become a multi-billionaire. How do you feel about that, Claire?
I would be more than a little bit cross. In fact, I'd be furious, and also she'd be very rich and I wouldn't.
Yeah. So referencing is actually quite similar to that. Referencing is, if you take it from this context into a different one, is recognizing someone else's work when they've achieved something. So in this case, what Karen would do is say, I'm going to reference this idea belongs to Claire, and she writes it into her assignment. And what that's saying is, it's not my idea, it actually belongs to Claire. So it means that Claire still gets the credit.
And after 20 years of hard work, I think you deserve that.
Yeah, exactly.
It took me ages to invent that light bulb.
Precisely. So if you think about it from Thomas Edison's point of view, it's in a reference in an assignment, what you do is you reference the idea that doesn't belong to you.
Yeah.
And that's all it is.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. And when you do that, it helps develop other skills, like your critical thinking skills, your writing skills, your ability to take other people's ideas and interpret them. So every time you go to write a reference, just thinking, I'm referencing the light bulb.
Yeah.
And it's important if another person's idea is not your own, you don't get in.
And all you're doing, isn't it, then, is saying to the person that's reading your work, and this is where I got this idea from, and this is where you could find out about it too.
That's it.
It's as simple as that. And
Really
the
simple.
level 1 modules, don't stress about the formatting too much. It's got to be learned, you've got to get there, but actually most level 1 modules gently ease you into just tell me that you read something somewhere to,
Yeah.
okay, now can you reference it appropriately? But there's lots of help with it, and it's understanding why you're doing it. I think you're right. It's the very first
Yeah.
step, because otherwise you don't see the point of it, and then it becomes a really hassly thing.
Mm.
Yeah.
Whereas if you know why you're doing it, you can gradually build the formatting in.
Well, not to worry, because even though 60% of people watching right now are at level 1, you know, they've all been used to crediting their stuff on Facebook in terms of the
Absolutely.
sources of
Same principle.
information.
I think that's the same
Exactly
thing.
the same principle.
Yeah.
That was almost better than your illustration.
Yeah, in fact,
She's upstaged you.
But it's interesting because it's one of these things that causes a lot of anxiety.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Sometimes just because it's a new thing. I'm going to go to university, I'm going to reference, and then
Yeah.
that can be the source of anxiety. But also something I see very commonly is students say, you've commented a lot on my referencing, because when I'm marking people's work, you sort of, you know, help them and model stuff. And as you say, it's not important. It's important to acknowledge the source as opposed to get the comma in the right place and this, that and the other.
Yeah.
But you do sort of help students with that. But sometimes then you can get like 6 comments maybe on an assignment that do to link to referencing.
Yeah.
And students might then think, oh, my referencing's really bad, and forget the fact that one comment about, you know, maybe ignoring the question or, you know, adding
Yeah.
too much of your own opinion, and this actually really matters in terms of why you got the grade.
Yeah.
But those 6 comments might look disproportionate. So how might students then work with that feedback that they're getting from their tutor to recognise then what matters in terms of improving their grades when not all of the comments have an equal weight, I guess?
Really good. I mean, I guess one of the things is hopefully your summary feedback will try to highlight the main things. So you need to read the comments. You'll get two forms of feedback. You'll get comments on the assignment itself, and then you'll get a kind of summary at the end. And the summary is the place to kind of think, okay, what's really important here? The next thing to do is to phone your tutor or email your tutor and say, okay, you gave me all this feedback. What do I really need to focus on for the next assignment? And again, it's about that. It's about dialogue. It's not meant to be a one-way conversation where you send me a piece of work and then I send it back and that's the end of it. Keep the conversation going and ask, what do I need to do? What do I need to really focus on?
Yeah, and actually, another thing for students to bear in mind as well, and this links back to very important what Claire said there about contacting your tutor. In your assignments, what always changes is the question and the content. What will never change is your ability to answer the question, to write critically, to reference. Those are key things that run throughout your university experience, but the content of what's being assessed is always changing. So it's a bit like, I'll make a very quick analogy. It's like if initially you're a student, you're starting out and you're driving perhaps a Skoda, but the content doesn't change. It's still the same engine. Eventually you're going to be driving a Lamborghini at the end of it. Do you know what I mean? You're driving a different car, but you're bringing a different content. But what you want to do is improve your skills as you go along.
Well, that's a lovely analogy. We're going to have to end there because you've got a plane to catch. And when you get home, if you could log on tonight and click on some of our widgets as well and tune in for the sport and fitness sessions this evening as well.
Absolutely.
But Kieran and Claire, thank you so much. That's been absolutely fantastic. Well, I hope that's introduced you to the fabulous relationship of your tutor and tutorials. We're now going to have a student story. We're going to hear from Liesl. And then we're back for our next session where we're going to talk about the most common student queries. So anything you want to know, do put that in the chat and we'll be having our best go at answering all of your questions right now. See you in a minute.